Howdys and salutations, y'all. How are you doing? Hope it's been a good weekend for y'all. I see we've got a few people who've poked their heads in today. Then we'll just kick things right off. Where we left off, we were doing final cleanup and touches on this Malenia art piece, and I did actually manage to beat the boss before we finished this, but only just. So now I have to actually get this done. This is proving to be harder. But yes, so we cleaned up a lot of our edges last time for the colors. Pretty happy with them. I still go back and forth on whether we ought to soften these a bit or not. I think in the grayscale it definitely does better without. But without the grayscale, it's like, obviously it's, sloppy. I just was doing quick color fills and such to get a feel for it, but something to consider. That said, the deep blacks are probably more authentic to the actual, reference here. And it gives it some interesting pop, so I may leave it for now. At this point, I think we're just sort of in the end game wrapping things up a little bit, so I'm going to try not to nitpick and over-tweak anything else to death. Because by the time we get into next month, and hopefully even a little sooner, we'll be moving on to the next thing. And once we get this done, I will post the full time-lapse everything for the, I'm sure, just embarrassing number of hours I've spent on this. Oh well, I've learned a lot, it's been worth it. Let's see, we zoom in here. This is one of those sections where the line work actually does make it look better. I'm sure there's a good balance to be found there too that I'll have to keep experimenting with. But for now, we were going to focus on texture through value. So if we just... We'll leave those for now, but we'll go ahead and leave the hue and saturation out of it for the moment. Most of these sections have a pretty clear texture and material just based on how we've got the shading going. Obviously the fur is an extreme example, but even the cloth, like the different folds of it in different angles, the metallic reflections and so on, the hair's got its own simplified deal going over there. But this section of the helm, the feathers are fine. And honestly, the line work's not bad, but the open swaths don't look metallic. This bit does, but these sections need a little bit of tweaking. And obviously the skin's kind of flat colors, but it's not the priority. So I'm trying to figure out, this will be our sort of experiment for the first part of today. Hopefully not the whole of today, I'm hoping we can get it sorted out maybe by halftime or sooner. But we're going to see if we can't make these edges feel a little more properly... Because it's not like a... Even here, it's not a hyper-reflective metallic. It's still fairly, well, tarnished, to overuse the term. That said, we can try to either pick out some of the noise, like just the random patterns in here, and see if we can build off of that. Or we can try to focus more on larger shapes. Pardon. Sorry about the yawns. 8 a.m. meetings are always a joy. Anyway, what we did do last time was just trying to pick out the big shape, and honestly I threw this down in like 5 seconds, just a quick little blob to get the lighting in place. And so its edges are way too soft and rounded for what we're really looking for. So option 1 might be simply to... it can still be rounded, but we can make it a little more angular, see how that fares. And if that doesn't do it, then we'll start trying to pick out actual, reflective patterns in here. But even then, the whole point of that is just to make those patterns more angular, so... Or to use those patterns to make it more angular. So I'm thinking... Let's start with this. Forget that this is, the maximum brightness setting for this helmet. I don't want this to end up being a bunch of sci-fi hexagons either, so I'm going to have to be careful with it. So step 1. And it still looks like a splotch. A slightly more angular splotch, but it doesn't really match the actual, the reflection doesn't match the curvature of the metal with it like this. Of course, I suppose if we were being truly authentic to that, ignoring any texture, it'd just be a very simple, swoosh. Maybe slightly more vertical. We'd have like a little inset here and then it would come down. But that's not really what we're going for. Especially because this metal has plenty of imperfections. So, let's take another think about it. If what we're really trying to show with this reflection is the shape of the helmet, which I do believe is my goal, at least. Y'all are obviously welcome to have different goals with it, but I'm still the one controlling the pen, so if you want your goals to be realized, you gotta tell me. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to lurk. I ain't gonna force you to say anything. Let's see. I can actually use the eraser because it's an edge. Rats. Okay. I'm sure we'll have to clean this edge up again once we get the lighting in here, so... If I'd done these on different layers, I could be using clipping layers right now, but I got really sloppy during the during the value section and did it all on one layer, which for the most part hasn't come back to bite us, knock on wood. But definitely had the potential to make some things easier if we hadn't done that. Okay. Well, no, actually. One would expect something like this. Maybe as the curvature shifts, it could arc up a little more. Obviously, that's not exactly what we get in our example, and it doesn't seem entirely right. So, part of that may be head angle. Got a very slight 3/4 view, although, like, not like just doing that would fix it either, because there's kind of a ridge in the front of it. Which, truthfully, by the way, I didn't realize when we started this. This is not rounded across the front, like along this axis. Oh, jeepers, that's a barely visible arrow. Like, obviously it's rounded going up like that, but if we were to have, you know, an arrow like along this axis, it's, in fact, comes to a point. So instead of being round like that, it's more of, like, our arrow, so to speak, is really more like this. Probably even sharper than that. So, it's going to have some impact on things, but it also just really kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, oh, huh. He started walking towards me at the start of the boss fight, and I was like, wait a second. That helmet doesn't look like what I thought it did. I guess I have the helmet now. I could just go, like, check it as a reference, but I'm going to try not to literally make this an Elden Ring stream. It's already getting pretty darn close, ain't it? Let's see. We'll keep on keeping on with this. Get up our edge there. And not all that. We want some of that. There we go. And let's just think about how exactly we want this to go. Well, we can do what I said we might do if the initial ones didn't turn out so great, and actually look at this pattern. Obviously, some of this is just the tarnish and the texture on the helm. In fact, a lot of it is. So we've got to sort of see past some of that. I noticed we also didn't dig too deep into, like, the depths of the actual, like, edge of the metal here getting worn off. It's not really a priority, it's just something that's, like, we could add if we wanted to. But, like, I mean, I can pick out random segments and just say that's the reflection, but I don't know that that's exactly what we want to do. That gets us some really wonky reflections. We get this one up here that kind of comes across. That, and it's got like... And I feel like that's definitely not going to look right. Nah, it looks like sinking opened kid pics and used a stamp on it. Not what we want. Let's look at an example of some of the metal that did turn out more the way that I'm trying to get at. Obviously, this is a different angle with different lighting, so it's going to be a kind of different challenge, but we might be able to use it to inspire some more creative stuff. It's getting a little less literal with our reference in the very matte metal helmet. Because honestly, in here, this looks like more reflection. In actuality, some of it's lighting, but some of it's just dirt. Obviously, like this little bit here is lighting. There's a dent there, and there's the... Ooh, okay, no, let's not do that. Got the crease down here, which mostly gets cut off by the edge of the art. Really had to have figured out that boundary earlier, but it's not that big of a deal. Being able to freeform it and not think about the edge when I'm drawing actually makes it a little easier to not accidentally account for the edge too much and think of it as a major part. So let's take that note then. Let's try getting a little more abstract with the reflection. Cleaning this up. Once again, not a vector layer, or we could use our awesome vector eraser and do all that in about like 2 seconds. But let's see what we're dealing with. Move that off a little bit. I think it might actually get us something close to what we want. Always use our janky fill tool and clean up. Cleaning up after the fill tool is still much easier than actually doing all that initially. When we're just testing things and throwing them down real quick, it's easy enough. I just have to remember that there are things what need fixing afterwards, like this. Fill tool likes to get a little over aggressive. Does look a little too angular and symmetrical, but I don't hate it. Just need to tweak it a little bit. Slight hint back up, also fine. I'm having trouble looking at it with a fresh, set of eyes, because now that the whole rest of the piece is there and I've seen the context and everything. So let's try Flippy-Doo. But not on that. I always forget how to do it on the full piece. Edit, transform. Flip horizontal. And before I even look at it, edit, transform, flip vertical too. Does that look like it would believably be a reflection if the light source was at the bottom left? Kind of, but it needs to go further up on the back of the helmet, methinks. And maybe not eke into this quite so much. Okay. Whoops, I don't know what I just clicked, but it opened a different window. Let's not do that. Okay. What we learned last time was carry it on down a little bit more. That part fairly smooth. Carry it on up a lot more. Which I guess kind of does happen. Always so hard to gauge. And then let's not make it look like it's really pulling into that. Let's just have it sort of be near it. It does eventually run into the side, but it doesn't actually affect it in any meaningful way. That actually looks kind of better. still stand to go down the front a little further, though. I don't know that we're really nailing the metal texture per se, but it's not entirely what needs to happen so much as the reflection looks plausible and it's not distractingly odd. We can always add a little bit of fuzz to the edge here, so to speak. One line that just indents like a little too much. Add a little bit of excitement to it. I say in a completely monotone voice while drawing on a completely monotone piece. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm happier with that. Not too far off the existing patterns for metallic reflections. It gets a little bit of the texture in there. Whoops, nope, gotta watch those stray lines. Especially this late in the game, because I don't have much time to fix them if I might easily not notice them. You could always add like a little bit of something in there, but I think that's going to get us looking too much like the fabric reflection down bottom right. I might leave that one, but not anything more than that. And yeah, sorry for my low-key talking. I'm honestly, my voice is a little worn out. It's been a long. Last week was a lot of stuff, and then today was a lot more stuff. So exciting. Also, not to make excuses on top of excuses, but the air quality is apparently horrible. And I went out for a daily walk, and I'm definitely noticing that air quality is not great. Not ideal. So, you know, we make do. Okay. First thing I see with this, we could always get a little more shadow in here if we really wanted to. I don't know that it'd work well because we've already got that shadow, so let's maybe not. Second thing I see with this, though, we can add a little bit of... Wow, 2 is way too small for what I'm trying to do here. Let's add a little bit of shape to these with the way the light reflects off of them. That little texture jag there is actually pretty good already. Always... I mean, we could add more shadow back there. Kind of not inclined to, truthfully. I guess we could always add some for, like, the actual, like, feathers, because they do have it. I just worry it'll be a little too bold. Yeah, it kind of blends into the hair. But we might be able to get away with something really subtle. We're careful with it. A little something to show a texture of a bend going in there. Catch being, I kind of want the bend to arc up more. That kind of aligns along this, because that is where the ridge would actually to some extent be. And even that alone is just maybe too bold, given what's around it. Wouldn't really expect a highlight or a backlight there either, so can't necessarily get away with that. Okay, let's come back to that. We'll revisit that. Because this is a lot of swath with very little texture going on in it, and that's something that I would like to avoid if I can. Just because, not that you don't want large untextured areas, but I don't know that that's specifically where we want it, because they affect where your eye goes. Detail attracts the eye, large open areas don't. Unless everything is hyper detailed, in which case they become a sort of like safe haven. At least for me, they do. Walk into a Baroque building, I'm just like, oh, please show me a floor tile. I think even that's added a little bit more oomph than it had, though. Oops, nope, once again with those stray marks. I'm honestly kind of feeling this one's too dark. I don't think it actually is. I think that whole section there is actually kind of supposed to be two of them, isn't it? What I'd really expect would be maybe something more like this. Perhaps a slightly more subtle curve than I initially gave that. Let's see if that helps break things up a little bit. Not sure that it will, but it actually looks extraordinarily janky. Okay. What is the actual like base here without any lines? It totally got the vibe that it shouldn't be as dark as it has been. Maybe the secret is I just need to chill with this shadow a little bit. I know we already looked at that once, and we've got the contrast issues with this shadow here, but so do all the other feathers, and they're mostly fine. Let's see. A little bit going on there. Sharpen that off a little bit. Just get something there. Nope, that single straight line is still drawing more attention than I want it to. But I do think that's better. A little less intense. We make it so this is more concentrated at the ends than in the middle. Trying to think about A, what it looks like here, and B, what the light, where the light source would be hitting. Okay, I think that's better. This has given these a little depth, and by extension implies more shape to the rest of these. Not a lot of room for it with the way we shaded it, but that's okay. I'm inclined to leave that there. So then, what that leaves us for this is it's time to clean up the hues. There's going to be a few stray ones. I have a lot of nonsense happening here. Which hue is this? Not the brown, is it? No. Well, it's supposed to be one of these 6, so I'm not sure. Yeah, that ought to be this one. Oh, I'm on the sticking value blocking tool. Oh no. Okay, let's get on the correct layer this time. Maybe have another go at that. Fill in down here. I kind of like the deeper gold that gives to some of the grays here. Is that a shot? See if it plays nice. I've intentionally left some of the light speckles here because they actually do look like pretty good wear accents. Let's see. So I'm excited for the next thing, although it's going to be, I hesitate to say more ambitious, because the amount of new stuff we tried on this was pretty stinking bold. What on earth? Did I get really lazy with dealing with the shadows, or was that just an intentional... I never did clean up the color borders down here, did I? I have more work to do on this helmet than I thought. Not an insane amount, but just some cleanup what needs doing, you know? A lot of it's not terrible. Don't know why I thought that would change anything. They're the same hue. Yeah, I guess the big thing was, I think we had concluded that we didn't like the gold shading in here, in which case I ought to clean that up, unless an intentional little bit to hint at the rest of that, but even that's not that shade of gold, so I doubt it. Yeah, I think inside the helmet, this is too much. As a shadow on more of the gold color, I think it's fine. But in the helm, not so great. Let's go over here and do a little bit of wrap. I want wear and tear. I don't want it to be so much that it doesn't read clearly. Okay, we want to get this for shadowy bits, odds and ends and such. I'll just sort of let the light reflecting on that eventually sort of fade out around that corner. That's fine. If I'm gonna do this, it ought to be at least the silver. And it really ought to follow the same sort of light curvature. We'll have some erasing to do, methinks. Maybe not with that big of an eraser, though. Just be like a little extra added aura on most of these. But not on this one, because it's literally the edge of the metal. Let's see. It doesn't add or detract much. I'm gonna leave it. No real point messing with it at that point. See, those are actually halfway decent skin tones. Usually not good with those. Match fairly well given the lighting and such. Not a 1-to-1, but you know, good enough. I know we were down to gold border cleanup, but I cleaned up everything else's border with the gold, and that covered most of it. And I want to leave that one somewhat janky, truthfully. I like the initial effect, and I've extended it intentionally. Yeah, let's leave that as a proper highlight. Normally I'm not big on the something went wrong and then we're just going to say it's my style, because it's not. But in this case, I do like some of the gray showing through. We've tried to intentionally add a little bit here and there. So it might be worth trying to clear up anywhere where it really ought to just be shadow. Still not 100% sold on this, but it's fine. Yeah. Let's see. Well, then I think that leaves the last thing to figure out is what we want to do with this stuff up here. And you can always extend it. Try to make it intentional. Even if something starts as an accident, you've got to tweak it to actually make it good. Most of the time, anyway. And you look at Minecraft's famous example where the creeper was originally a pig with the torso oriented along the wrong axis. If they just left it as a top-heavy pig, I don't think it would have been quite as iconic. I know the pigmen exist, but they're definitely their own thing compared to it. Definitely ought to have used the fill bucket for that, but you know. I like this because it does differentiate it from the depth of the lower one. I just want to, I'll have to wait and see how it looks from a distance before I commit to it. Imply a little bit of a connection there. Distance, it looks actually pretty decent. Our openings are a little bigger than on the original, especially this one. And so we got to sort of keep that in mind as we're shading, as we might need to tweak things to match. But I think that's actually looking pretty good. Where we're at? We're at 835. Okay. One more thing I want to tweak a little bit. Just a little bit. It's back on that value layer. I want to smooth out some of the shading on the neck a little bit. Truth be told, it just isn't as harsh as I was making it look. Well, it was okay, it's an interesting style, I just want to see if we can't get it a little more. Yeah, I feel like it's less distracting now. Although, one thing I ought to note is that this definitely needs to be more over here. Closer to where this light starts hitting. It's a pretty quick shift. Honestly, a pretty high contrast moment. Let's see. Still ought to be fairly small. It just needs to not be quite the same. Okay. I think that's better than where we were. It's still... it's got some weird rhythm to it. Let me... There we go. Now it's not quite as jarringly symmetrical. It'll do. Okay, and that still look good with the color on it? Yes, it does. Benefits of having that value layer underneath makes a lot of stuff easier to tweak. Let's see. I think that's basically it for tweaks and adjustments. I think we can call that a finished with this coloring style. However, I know on the thumbnails we used a different one, and I'd like to try to bring that one to a fruition if we can. So, well, we've got this as one coloring option. And we can do it with or without the line work, and it actually still looks decent either way. Some parts, like, this looks great with the line work, this looks great with the line work, this has kind of a cool glow effect with it, but other parts, like, obviously the nose is not great, but the hair isn't great, some of the fabric down here isn't. So it's a trade-off. Neither version's perfect. We did limited line art, and I wanted to spend significantly more time, like, choosing which line art to keep and which to get rid of. We could do that, but, not super feeling like that'd be the best use of time right now, when we could do something else that's a little more fun. And given that this looks like a pretty good drawing, and I do have a penchant for lineless styles in any case, I think we've established that pretty thoroughly at this point. So yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and just export this one while we've got it visible here. I'm going to throw that one in another file. I've got a file for finished art exports. Let's see. Malenia illustration V1. We'll have to crop it and some jazz because the actual size is not this mostly square we've got here. It's this rectangular canvas. So, but we've got space to do that. Now. Man, what? Oh, right, I forgot we were messing with some of these. Oh, I do kind of like the warm highlights on that one. That's not bad. Adds a little life to it. I could go either way. I'll have to remember that. I don't know what... Oh, that one just looks bad. This one looks interesting. This one, I'm deleting. Goodbye. Zoop, gone. There we go. And this one was the hyper bold shadows. Fun in their own right, not really what we're going for. I guess we got the rough outlines, but they're barely going to be visible under with everything over them. Old guidelines. Throw that into rough outlines too, honestly. It was an alternate background layer. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we move on. It's actually pretty good with the dramatic dark background too. But let's see. Putting this away now, we're back to values. But let's see, I don't think we had one in the fuzz tests. We're not worried about the alt 6th. Oh, right, they were on the rough outlines because it was before we even had value in here, so it was just like really roughing stuff in. So, or fine detail outlines, not the rough outlines. Dagnabbit, I've checked darn near every folder before I'm getting to the right one. Yeah, the soft shading layers. Which I guess means I need to have these on for this to, at least to demo these. Soft shading, soft shading, soft shading, soft shading. So this is what it looks like with the value layer underneath it. Obviously a little rough, because it was designed before we had the values. So it's more of like a super soft, super sloppy, vaguely painterly look. And that's kind of what I want to mess with. So I will probably put the value layer under it. We'll see. We'll do some tweaking there. And I'll go ahead and put away all these soft shading ones so that we can use our line references if we want to. Okay. But for now, let's turn those off too. And can I even put these in a folder, or is it going to just trap them away from the shadow value blocking if I do that? May have to think that through before I do anything. Let's see, the inks folder ended up having nothing in it. Let's go ahead and make a new folder. We'll put it up here. We're not clipping it. I guess we could clip it, actually. Help with our edges and such. And we want major quotation marks painterly. It's not actually painterly. It's not remotely painterly. But that feels like a decent enough thing to call it. Other thing is that I'm going to go back to a fun little low-spec library. Because this one, we've got a different color scheme for it that I could try to somewhat recreate, and it wouldn't be horrible to get something kind of close, but definitely wouldn't be as nice as just using Golden Sunset. Sort of my go-to for a lot of nice things. We can tweak if we need to. We can adjust. We can even try a custom one if we really want. But let's see. The other thing we need to do is we need to go to our absurd Windows XP screensaver pen. This is just a folder, isn't it? We need an actual raster layer in said folder. Cool. Let's see. So we can see these end up looking pretty faint, honestly, over top of all this. And I guess it's not really... I mean, obviously we can just keep layering it on. Like, go 1, go 2, go 3, and eventually it'll start to show through. With like a decent bit of color still. But that's gonna absolutely murder my undo buffer. But B, it's also not really quite what I'm looking for. So instead of that, why don't we actually try our own color palette on this one? Let's make an alternate Malenia color palette. And there's sort of, oh boy, there's going to be 4 that I aim for. Let's go to our Malenia. That 5 value grays sure has gotten a lot more colors than that, hasn't it? Go into our settings. Duplicate set. Malenia alt colors. Say OK. And so for our alt colors, we've still got our 5 value grays as backup. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of our grays. And then I'm only keeping, let's see. Which of these do I want to grab? I want to keep this one pretty light. I want to keep it a fairly simple color palette too. Got the potential to get kind of out there if I'm not careful. So let's go for tossing this one, tossing the brown, tossing the skin tone, and yeah, we're just going to keep these 2 for now. Maybe you should have kept the other red. We can always add it back. But what I want to do is sort of what we did last time. Keep the same saturation, get the light blue in there as a... Well, I don't want the light blue as the backdrop for the gold, though. So I'm going to go a little off and like get a much darker blue for it, but still a blue as a backdrop for the gold. Even that's probably too blue. I need something more. Yeah, there we go. Let's lower the saturation a hair, I think. This triangle one, I'll admit I'm a little rusty using. No, in my mind, this is add color, but it's replaced. This one's add color. Okay, this is why we keep the old one. Add color. Cool. Now if I select this one, go back to our color wheel, and we're over here in the reds. I guess the full opposite would be a sort of like really deep tealy, wouldn't it? Let's start with these as our deeper colors, and let's see what happens. This might end up being too high contrast, and I may end up using it really stupidly, but I'm hoping because we've got values already sorted in here, that some of that's already going to be good. We may want a second. We may want the other gold, too. Probably got a little overzealous in clearing out the color palette, truthfully. I always forget that the size of this brush is actually just stinking really big. Let's just get like a loose one down in here. Just go through it a couple times. We'll see if this works with the values underneath or if we're going to have to sort of freeform again. I'm fine with either. And then I'm going to throw, obviously not going to make much difference in that section, but just enough to be visibly blue. I'm going to do one single layer of the blue on these lower shadows too. Get that in there. See if it'll end up popping better. I do think that I should have gone for the more golden tone for this piece. A similar detail. We can try to get some green in the shadows up here, and just seeing how it looks. At this point, I'm just experimenting with different techniques, honestly. If I wanted to get exactly the same painterly style we had, I'd just turn the values off and have a freeform go at that. And frankly, if we're not getting anything that looks even remotely decent by the time the turn of the hour rolls around, we'll probably go to that. But yeah, let's see. Let's start with this. Go ahead and get the red, flip the layer so it won't get off on the edge at least. Man, the pressure control on this one makes it real sensitive. Something I still got to get the hang of. Yeah, I think we're trying to do too many different things here, and it's not quite playing nice. And we've chosen a rather weak palette for it, truthfully. We want this to look decent. And, you know, I would like it to look decent. Let me open up. Not on there. Just as a reference from some of our earlier stuff. Streams, title cards. And we can look at this. So you can see there's only 2 real colors there. And even on this one, like, we got a little bit of red in there, but it's just that it's just a reddish pink. It's not like a full-on separate part of the color palette. For this one, we've got that same red acting as a shadow. There's face. Oh, and then that's just, yeah, that was once we were actually doing value. So yeah, maybe that's the secret. Obviously, these aren't great. There's a lot of stuff going on with them, but I don't know. There's something interesting there still. Yeah, maybe rather than creating a new beast and a new monster, let's just pop that folder away. I mean, properly away. Zoop. And let's actually do the golden sunset that we talked about. As an alternate to the hues. We'll go back to our fine detail outline. We'll open up golden sunset. Which I wish, I just wrote down that it was from Low Spec. I highly recommend checking it out if you like it. I don't have the original creator's name written on the palette, unfortunately. I regret that. Let's see, first off. Yep, that is our background color. Cool. And let's have a think. This high contrast area is an easy place to start. And we'll get pretty small brush for this. Yes, quite small brush for this. I can't worry too much about edges, but I do still care about them. Sort of get one more layer going in there, because that one's pretty deep all in all. Let's see. Then I want to get this whole section with one layer of the gold at least. We can tweak stuff, we can add lights and darks later, but I do want to get a sort of base shade or tone or whatever you want to call it here. Be real careful to keep my pen pressure consistent this whole time. You can see I've already veered off that a little bit. Bit of an adventure, this one. Okay. Make this a little smaller and really start to get up in some of these too. I know they're a hair darker. And of course, we can go back to our 10. We get one more round on this. Just doing this both to experiment with it and to sort of show an example of there's some freeform ways to shade that are much easier and get interesting effects too. I really like our flat value one though. Okay, and now let's start getting some of this more golden, less coppery tone on here. Tone is not the right word, by the way. That's just what I keep saying. Don't use my random comments as art terminology lessons, please. Please, I'm bad enough at art terminology. Used to be better at it. Let's see. Yeah, again, we don't want crazy control over this, but we can still try to get like a little bit of consistent shadows and such in here. And also, to some extent, highlights. Just the edge. Make that pop a little more. And like, it's not like these individual lines are going to be crazy visible on the final piece, but they'll give it a little bit more life. Let's see, and we can up our shadows just a hair. Up our shadow game. This one's even deep enough that we could get in just a hint of that purpley red in there too. Let's see, maybe even like just a little share of it down here. Smooth it out. Of course. Yep. Okay. Looking at it on a whole, that's a nice gradient we've got going there. We'll leave that for now. We won't spend crazy too much time on it. Now the hair's interesting because it's actually quite bright, but it's also got this reddish hue that I kind of want to play with having in here. Let's start with it as a base. Try to follow the direction of the hair a little bit, although again, we're going pretty freeform with this. As is the hair itself, truthfully. Probably ought to just stick to a consistent direction if I'm going to do the shading, but you know. For a lot of this, the stroke won't be super visible, so. We'll say this is definitely forcing some. This is a good pen pressure control exercise. Ooh. Sticking to that is tough. Let's get a little more in these sections where it's going to be darker. I even do for some of these really dark sections, I'm going to get a hint of the proper darkest one in here. A little bit of that clouding in here too. Get some contrast. And we can add a little bit more in the way of strands, but again, this is kind of like not really meant for individual hairs so much as just general layout of where stuff's gonna land. And then I may actually take our gold in here and give a once over, especially in this lighted section. Really, our gold one is really strong compared to everything else in this palette, so I've got to be careful with it. We might have to do some stuff to cool it down again afterwards, but let's start. Like a little of a highlight going in there. You may have guessed at this point I'm just kind of messing around with it, seeing what we end up with. We'll definitely smooth all this out later. Because like you can see, this one ended up fairly smooth all in all. This is a stinking hodgepodge. But that's fine, honestly. Partly because hair kind of is most of the time. But also partly because, you know, we'll have another go to sort it out. Okay. Got a little shadow going in here. And back up. Full variance on that. Cool. We can go for a little darker in there, honestly, with this one. Because I know that we're going to have some interesting darker golds next to it. Full round of this on everything that ought to be golden. Except for that one really bright bit that you can sort of see me dodging around right now. Next up, I'm going to smooth over all of that with just a nice flat layer of our mid gold here. I guess it's the darker of the golds. And then we'll get like a little more light going on this little section in particular, just to make it pop. And let's see. Ah, yes. Phone notifications going off. The consistent time every time. You'd think I'd remember to ignore them. Let's see. There we go. That actually probably is a better contrast than we got in our actual piece with that. We've got the super dark belt going on here, of course. Keep on plugging along with that. Because I know we're going to have some nice high contrast bright gold up against it. Again, we're not really trying to stick to super boldly, just, you know, broadly. Then this is all going also in the dark, but not quite as harsh as the belt. Should have used a bigger brush for that, would have made this way easier. In fact, I'm going to do that. I hesitate to like leave a seam in the middle, because if I change my pressure at any point, then that, yeah, I mean, you can even see that there, the seam will start to get obvious if I'm not careful. Here we can like I'm gonna give like a little more textures and going on to that one. And then this section itself can actually also be comparatively dark. Once again, not quite as dark as the belt. I'd love to not overlap the belt as much as I did there, but you know. This means we go over the belt one more time. Really solidify its edges. For some of this, I may give it just the faintest red hint. And let's see. Yeah, once again, trying to show individual edges and stuff using this technique has not been super great. Not with this brush anyway, so it's something I just need to remember. I kind of have to re-blend over it, smooth it out a little bit. A clean edge there. Once you've got an edge mark in there, there's not really any getting rid of it. Yeah, it's got way too much detail. That's going to draw attention I don't want it to. Well, we can always erase and rework it. The joy of digital art especially, not art in general. There's almost always a second shot. Obviously, there's some art pieces where it's just like, here's your block of marble. It was $50,000 and imported from another country. Make it beautiful. And you're just like, well, obviously no one's giving me that art commission, thankfully. But, you know. Like stinking Mount Rushmore, or its neighboring mountain, being produced by the local Native American tribes. which is actually considerably more ambitious than Mount Rushmore. And Mount Rushmore didn't even actually achieve everything it set out to do. So I kind of look forward to seeing what they managed to pull off. Most likely not within my lifetime, but you know, they're making steady progress. Ah, dagnabbit. Lost the pressure right at the end. That's fine, we can just get nice shadow patches with this pretty easily. A little bit along the edge too, if we really want. You go for a slightly larger one on this lower section. Because bigger area means harder to control, so we can use the tools we have in our favor, then that'd be awesome. Speaking of which, I wish someone would come out with like a stinking ethically sourced AI art generator already. Like, it's possible, just that no one has been doing it. And those have the potential to be really awesome tools for creativity and for people who don't want to take the time to develop various different skills, or who just need like a certain thing. Like, it's an industry shakeup, sure, but that's the kind of thing that is inevitable. You can't just fight off industry shakeups like that. What you can do, however, is make sure that they follow the stinking rules, or else you get garbage like Bitcoin and NFTs. Let's see. Okay, obviously this is going to be super dark down here. We'll get the orange tint, but it's also going to be mostly. Whoops! Let's not change palettes here. Mostly still this. With the red cutting through. Guess the skin tone could be the gold, or we could go for even the lighter shade. Lighter shade is the background, so there's not a lot of point in quote unquote going for it unless it's on top of other things already placed. Let's see, we're just gonna keep going with this sort of freeform approach. Okay. Building up a little bit, rather than marking areas that are definitely shadow right off the bat. Just kind of keep building up in layers. See where we get with that. For these, we can of course get a little darker. We'll keep it a little more tame than we did in the super high contrast we did in the original. See if we end up with something that we like a little better. Because who knows, we just might. It's that same rose tint of the cloak, but very dark. Speaking of Rose, and this is a heck of a jump of the brain, but I'm thinking about Chairman Rose from Pokemon. Has anyone tried the new Pokemon games? I know they're not, like, they came out pretty recently. And are they any good? Because they seem like they've got fun story and stuff, just a lot of mechanical jank. And I'm kind of down to put up with mechanical jank for a good story, compared to Pokemon Sword, which had less of both. Less mechanical jank, but also just less story, which isn't, in my opinion, great. I don't know. It had its charms, don't get me wrong, but like it had a lot of problems. I want to be real faint on this fur darkening. Get it to a nice seam, and then we can pick up. That way, if we put back down, the edge will be in a place that makes sense. Or do the same thing for this one. How to do each segment that way, even. That way we can use the natural seams this brush creates slightly to our advantage. Not perfect, but it's potentially beneficial. We'll try it, you know? Only way to find out if that's a good technique that we might be able to use is to give it a shot, so. Let me go ahead and fill that one in though, because I know that it's ultimately actually quite a lot darker. Let's see, and then just kind of creeping in. Start to get a little more of the gold going on up here. To get more towards the front, of course, it's not just a little bit creeping in, but it becomes pretty bold. And give it a little more oomph out here, because I'm going to give it a little more tail to contrast too. Okay, let's see. Some parts may obviously need some reworking, as always the case. I'm going to try darkening a fair bit of the fur now that we've got it in here initially too. This I want to rework, and the hair is definitely going to need some tweaks. But I think we're making good headway. Always good to just zoom out and sort of check where you're at once in a while. I did like this kind of fur technique we got with shading it in the middle, so I am going to recreate that best as we can. Kind of trying to follow along the forms that we've created here. Knowing full well that I'm going to come through another time and just do like a soft one for this lower section too. I'll put some emphasis on some of that. Let's see. That should give it a little more kick. I'll give it a little just right along the edge with some shadow. Doesn't really need to go past that point. Because past here, the shadows are going to be rather differently tinted. And rather bold, truthfully. We'll get a lot of shade going on in this bit too. We'll just have kind of the skin tony tint to it. Already got it going a little bit, but I'll emphasize the hair more. Slightly lighter cloak for this bit. Nope. Too big an area, too small a brush. 10 out. Try to have another go at that. There we go. Now we can put another go to try to get some of those shadows. Once again, I'm sticking with the big brush for now. In this one, I think we're just doing full blue again. We want to try to add just a touch of maybe the beige, see if we can get some nice brown. I'm kind of doubt we're going to land on a brown that would work here though, but worth a shot. Yeah, not really. Just lightens it again. which is admittedly not a bad thing for over here. Let's see. Yeah, obviously when we were a little more careful and cautious, it works well on the consistent flat areas of color like this. It's a little harder when we're trying to work on these, although I'm sure it could be done. Just need to be a little more thoughtful in how I approach it. I reckon we can get one more layer of pink on here that'll tie this together better. Yeah, nope, as soon as the strokes become super visible, gotta keep a consistent shading direction. Granted, I also have to keep a consistent pressure or else all the strokes become visible. It's not, I mean, it's not inherently a bad thing, but it's not really what I'm going for right here. You know what, I'm going to come through with a little bit of the darker blue and just really lean into some of these nooks and crannies. Just along the outer edge. And yeah, I mean, this is mostly just, again, these were doodles for thumbnails, so I don't know how the final result is going to look. Especially because I know the helmet's going to take a stinking lot of time. But it's all a start. Let's see, let's do the rest of the skin, and then we'll take our break. Because always got to do that. I'm very bad about remembering to, but it is important. Should have used a bigger brush. Try to keep the line consistency pretty consistent. That, and then if we do a separate one here, there's a few natural boundaries we can work with mayhaps. We can try, once again, just the building it up with color for these shadows. I think that tends to get a smoother effect. This does truly look like we're just sort of framing the face, which isn't entirely right. And looking at the mouth, always an adventure. We'll do for that. Some dark coming out of here. On our next piece, we're going to do a lot more emphasis on like smoother shading practices and stuff, because it's not something I do much and it's something I need to get better at. There we go, that's reasonable for that. Let me... Not the right one, is it? Yeah, I think for this shadow we may need to get some of the slightly darker going in here a little bit. Just like we probably ought to have for the back down here too. You can even layer that a couple times, but I'm ultimately going to go back over it with the gold once. Just to make just to help, it helps sort of smooth it in. Oh, man, that was super good right up until the last line. Motion. Dagnabbit. Okay, that's better. That even almost gets like the feel of the Scarlet Rot when you actually see her without the helmet. That's actually not bad as an effect. And this is without using any of the actual blending tools that CSP has. This is just trying a very translucent pen and seeing what we can pull from it. So yeah, we will take a quick break and then we will return on the flip side. So I'll see y'all in just a couple moments. Howdys and salutations. Now, man, it's amazing. Like, I'm not gonna pretend I'm fully awakened now. I need to do some actual sleep before I'm there, but it's amazing how just standing up and walking a little bit gets the blood flowing and the thoughts flowing a little bit. For example, think about how much insanely faster this has been. Like, and even if we really took our time with it and did it all with the level of thoroughness as this, which is tempting in its own right, like, this is so much faster than the several weeks we spent on our other shading method. And while I'm not going to say the results are better or worse, they're just very much different, it's interesting to think about in terms of, like, if I had to do something where I needed to recreate a whole bunch of them, if I need to recreate it super precisely, then I might consider the other method more, even though it's slower, or something maybe less intense version of that. But if the only rule is just, like, quick and fast, like, this is definitely a quick and fast, and not, when we put the right effort into it, not garbage way to do it. Let's see. Let's try this section again, but this time, you know, kind of trying. I'm going to get one base, just a real light. We'll work our way up to anything darker. I just want to sort of set our foundational. Whoops, getting a little too much dark there. Okay, we've lost it. That is the one challenge of this one, is you've got to commit to pretty long strokes. Long, consistent strokes. Which is not the easiest thing in the world to do. You can really kind of play up that edge there, that's fine. Cool. Part of why I didn't just erase and clear this whole thing is you can leave some pretty intentional edges that aren't bad for depth, really, even if they're not all that precise. Okay, now the catch, though. Really think about where we want proper, deeper shadows. Really just kind of lighten up a little bit as we go down. Lighten up, why not get darker? Put a little too much weight on the pen, but still, that's not bad. Do something similar over here where we just kind of fade it out. But the problem is, fading out in my mind also means going slower, and so I go over and over the same spot again. Okay, that's interesting to note. I'm going to just generally do one layer, darkening everything. That may be, whoops, dang it. The more I move towards that corner, the more I, like, accidentally run my elbow into the desk. Shouldn't do that. I should also not be trying to do a mixing phase on a small pen. I'm not sure how much merit there is to these quote-unquote mixing phases, because ultimately the line work from below still shows through, and any stinking pressure differences do too. Dang. There we go, we can just kind of soft stuff in there. And it's still obviously going to have this rounded edge feel unless we really, like, are siphoning up and doing hard shadows again, but that's sort of what we're trying to get away from. Very different approach from the last one. Ooh, okay. There we go. Okay, that's better. And that's, I mean, it's still messy, but yeah, no, it's just kind of still messy. Huh. Not really quite nailing. Nice smooth gradient like this works pretty easily, although that also ended up using two colors to really do it. Don't know that any of the other colors would be extraordinarily suitable for this one. And that just leads to more. What I can do, it's probably a little late on this one, so you can also try going the other way. Of course, if I'm consistent with my line work, this won't leave any edges, and so won't make any tangible difference. Other than being noticeably easier to do. But you can intentionally gradient that way a little easier. That might be something to think about. Sort of easier to do a gradient long ways with the way this is set up. To the point that if I really wanted to have a go at the fur again, which I kind of do, but let's get the helmet done once, and then like maybe we'll practice the technique while we do that, and then we can come back to the fur and the hair. First off, let's just definitely darken all that up a little bit. Get some nice edges there. There we go. Secondly, not all of the helmet needs the darker orange, but some sections of it I do think will. Namely the actual main helm body per se. Try to scooch up in here. I'm not going to worry too much about scooching up in these. Just enough to leave an intentional boundary. Still haven't raised my pen from this. Okay, let's start with that. I'm going to go to a smaller one. See if we can't do a little bit more in here. Because we can always try to go vertical, of course, but it's going to run some risks of a less smooth encounter with the main section. Ah, yes, the most trustworthy of comments. I see you, complex fishing scheme, lurking here since the beginning. I must say, whatever your fishing scheme is, it's certainly more complex than I can figure out. Because I have no idea how you're making profit off of this. Or successfully fishing. Hey, that's fair. I am more than happy to be background noise. What you editing, if you don't mind me asking? Well, I guess it's less helpful background noise when the background noise starts talking back, ain't it? If I had a like white noise video on YouTube, but like at like the 1 hour mark it just starts reading random people's names just to see if I can like startle them, I don't think it'd be very popular. Well, it'd be a popular prank video to send people. Be like the long con Rick Astley. What we want to get. Whoops. Let's not swap our palettes here. Still on low specs Golden Sunset. Again, I don't think that site sponsors people. I think they are one of those ones where they have a Patreon just to keep the site running, honestly. They don't have sponsor budget, but definitely recommend. They're a great resource for color palettes. I'm also a fan of Coolors, Coolors. Not like the thing you use to keep stuff cool. But that one has gotten pretty advertisement and account driven lately, and it's made the experience of using it more frustrating. If you've got the patience for that stuff, like, it's still a good tool, but it's kind of a pain now. I mean, I understand. You got to keep the servers up and running, and a lot of people using the resource for free. At some point, you ain't making money on that. But I used to have a free account, that I had a bunch of pallets saved to, and when they changed them all to pay accounts, like I lost a bunch of that stuff, just because of the limited number I could even have. I ended up with less than that limited number. It just cleared out a whole bunch of ones I'd had. So I wouldn't save stuff on the site itself necessarily, but you can export the pallets super easily. It's part of it. So like, yeah, no, coolers is nice. Still a good tool. But low spec is a lot more searchable and has lovely pre-made stuff on there. Coolers has community-made content too, but like it's not to the same degree. This is where I can intentionally add a little bit of texture. Just having some fun. This. There we go. Drop this down to a smaller size and really just lean onto the back edge of these a little bit, make them pop. Go. How are we doing on time? 9:30-ish? Cool, 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 cool. Okay, before we get too far up here, I am going to go ahead and get some of these shadows in here. This will be considerably easier to do a lot of this if the shadows are already there. Okay, and now just want our nice gold shade across this whole section. Not super dark. Get it blended in there. And there we go. Some of the splotchiness works well on that one because of the varied texture in it. And I want to do a similar deal up on this one, truthfully. Once again, keeping this small. Get a few shadows just sorted out in here. That one, lean more into it on the bottom, I suppose. Pretty bold one, we can get some in there. Then I'm gonna do solid gold on the undersides of a lot of these. Not gonna commit to it to the same degree we did on the other one. Oops. And a little more resistance on my nib all of a sudden. Interesting. Wonder what the deal with that is. Did I press down too hard and scratch it, maybe? Hope not. I have backups, but I'd like to not burn through them too quickly if I can help it. We just do our super light. But I have been doing a lot of flat, like, hold on one side of the nib and just hold it down shading. So that probably going to wear it a little unevenly now that I actually think about it for 2 seconds. That's still not a bad technique, though. Okay. Yep. Obviously, like, part of the reason this is going faster, just in all credit, in all fairness, is we worked out a lot of the challenges of like where shadows need to go and stuff already with the other one. So like, of course this is going to go faster. Let's go. Or go with this. Or go with the proper gold. Give it some vibrance. Make it a little warmer than if we had just done this gold from the get-go. Then we can start working on our highlight here. Okay, let's see. This one even almost calls for a colder shadow than the others. This may ultimately be too dark of a shadow. Oh, we'll find out. This one definitely does. Well-defined shadow there, honestly. And this one, we're just going to use the pure gold, none of the warmer one. One little go in there. This one, however, we're going to go over it once in this warmer, almost orangey shade of one. Then we'll do it in the lighter one. And that's really not worked. I thought I accidentally released my pen there. That explains it. Okay. Learn from our mistakes. Fade this along a different axis. Then, of course, the one on the flip side. Definitely going to have a lot of the darker, especially biased towards one side, but is ultimately still of this lighter gold material too. I mean, let's see. Yeah, let's redo the hair, and then we can maybe think about redoing some of the fur and maybe the fabricy sections. But the point is, that took maybe an hour and change, and it's obviously not ideal. There's some stuff that you'd want to clean up, hair, fur, but like, it's not a horrible thing. Got an interesting effect to it, especially when zoomed out. If we're looking at it like icon size, the fur stands out and the hair stands out, but the rest of it, like, hey. There's the power of like a well-made palette, like these ones that Low Spec has. Again, I'm not sponsored, they don't have money, I just really like the tool. I mean, they might have money. I didn't ask, and I don't have enough of a following to justify anyone sponsoring me right now. Not that stinking HelloFresh didn't offer, but I think they offer literally anyone with a webcam, so... Okay. OneDrive, I've repeatedly told you not to back up all those big files. Did you automatically go and be like, oh hey, you forgot some files, and back them up again? I have to have a word with OneDrive. Again, I mean, like, it's not the first time. Main secret is I don't want to be backing up video recordings. Because, you know, I put those on YouTube. That's my backup. I don't need another cloud backup of those. There's plenty of stuff where it makes sense to have triple cloud backups. That's not one of them. What on earth did I do? Okay. Let's make this a bigger brush, shall we? And we'll go back to a smaller brush. I mean, we can try a style like this, but I highly doubt it's going to end up looking good. Still worth a shot, you know? We're experimenting. Let's see. Hmm. It certainly gives a certain liveliness to it. More liveliness than it probably ought to have, truthfully, but you know. Point that I'm going to sort of temper it down a little bit. And then do some slightly bigger swaths with the red, just to kind of bring it all back in together. Okay. This does certainly add a little bit of more vibrance to the hair color in here, really. That's kind of neat. Oops, that's too bold. Overlaying it with that. I don't know. Definitely a funky style, and I don't know that it works at a distance, but it's kind of neat. Nope, hold on. Got to pay attention to the direction of the grain, so to speak. Gonna try to patch gaps. We're gonna have to try to follow the same logic that we've been following. Yep. Yep. If we added just a really... That's gonna be too much. Like, darkening it is not going to solve the problem. I was correct. So it wasn't a bad look for the sections down here, truthfully. But yeah, now it's so dark compared to the entire rest of it. Makes everything else almost look washed out. Which isn't horrible, but it's not great. Honestly, an effort to darken these back sections isn't the worst thing in any case. There we go. That actually helped a lot with the fur, I think. Because I don't mind it being more open over here, but it makes sense to have it quite as bright as it was over here. These areas trying to figure out how to describe the difference, because some areas definitely this is much easier to get a nice shadow and lighting with than others. Then obviously whatever's happening with the stinking hair, I don't know. And we can have another go at just doing a lightning layer over it. Not like the light and the dark automatically cancel each other out. They're very much just different colors, so it won't like erase the shadows or anything. Do it a couple of times too, mayhaps. Obviously this many iterations is going to do just awful things to the borders with the other shades and other colors. But that at least brings it back into the same sort of level of warmth. Not warmth, but, boldness. Let me try washing out just this section, see what happens. That's actually feeling a little better, weirdly. I may do a supremely light reddening layer. I want this to be more red, not more dark. Yeah, I think that's fine. Actually, going over it that many times has just turned all the random strokes into a sort of very faint, soft texture, which blended well together. Which is one of those things about this technique, is the more times you iterate over it, the smoother it ends up getting. Not necessarily the better results, mind, but, the smoother. So there we are with that. Hour and a half-ish, not even, for an interesting shading technique. We've also got, looking back, the harsher technique that we were looking at here. Actually, hold on. Let's see what this looks like. Without the lines, it's certainly interesting. It kind of still gets the feel. Actually, surprisingly well on this little bit here. Yeah, okay. That's surprisingly not terrible. The knot work could use some work, but you can still kind of see the flow of it. But what I really want to see is what happens if we layer them on top of each other. That's actually really interesting. Both because they're different color palettes, and so the way they interact is kind of fascinating. And also shows how much I ended up whiting out the hair and that other one, so I'm definitely still not the right approach for that. But this would be an interesting technique to use in the future as a sort of way of texturing things, because I really, really like what it did to the fabric down here, this kind of interesting shadow effect that we've got going on in here. I really like the effect it has on the metal, making it pop a little more here. Looks, it's not as good up here, but it does some interesting things. The skin, obviously, probably could have used some more iteration to smooth it out, honestly, but generally speaking, it's an interesting result. So yeah, interesting. Just interesting things we're toying with here. Sure, that's going to look just stinking bizarre in the speed paint once we finally export that. But I do think, as far as final results go, this is where we're going to call it for this one. Quite like the result for our plain color scheme. And then obviously our painterly one is an interesting one in its own right. And I think it's cool too, but it's something that we need to refine a little more. This one, for all its flaws, feels very intentional that everything happened. Not like I had a plan and I intentionally screwed it up, but like I put in as much concentration and planning and thought into making it, getting it to this point. So I'm pretty happy with that being results is the best that I would be able to pull off right now. Of course, there's always plenty more to learn, plenty more to do, but I think this is a pretty good spot for the night. Let's see. I guess what I can use the last few moments for is talk a little bit about what we're going to do next. Tomorrow, truthfully, it depends on energy levels. If I'm the same level of tired, we may do a Stardew Valley or Terraria stream or some such. Or maybe some Elden Ring. But I don't know. Elden Ring streams, I feel like I gotta commit. Because the problem with it is I'm not going to remember what I've done on the new character for the stream, and if it's been like a month between streams. Also, as much as it's a fun game, I did just put like well over 200 hours into it, which even averaged out over 12 months is still like close to it was like close to 18 hours per month, which is like more than 2 whole work days every month. That put a lot of time into that game, and I need to sort of let my mind recoup from it. I still enjoy like the fan side of it and doing art and stuff based on it, but actually being in the world is just it's so much. And it's not like it's honestly those games can be relaxing. Not the boss fights though. But definitely not on your first time exploring it either. It's more like when you're going back on the second time, when it's been a while and you poke back in, it's like going to a vacation to a place you've been to before, and it's like, oh, I remember this. Oh, look how this hasn't changed. Or if they update it, it does change. But yeah, in any case, I need to pause from it. I don't think I can start a new playthrough right now. Much as idiot part of my brain keeps saying, go, play again, get the last few achievements. The last few achievements require me to finish the game 2 more times. No. Not in the near future. But yeah. I think that we'll be chilling on actual Elden Ring playing. Tomorrow, either we'll be playing a game and resting a little bit, or, depending on energy levels, we might jump into the next thing. Now, the next thing is going to be building on the stuff we've been practicing this month, but also throwing in some new skills because, of course, we can't just be complacent after all. Got to keep pushing, even though practice, iteration and practice and doing similar things repeatedly is also a good idea. But we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to do some new stuff, and then we'll get to practice a lot of this. May try a different, more smooth shading technique for it. We'll find out. Because the next one I'd like to draw is, obviously it's another Elden Ring character. I know I'm on a kick, but when it comes to motivation, it doesn't. Having the stream every 3 days a week is certainly great for motivation, and like having techniques and stuff I want to work on, having time set aside. But there's no shame in chasing the fandom energy, So I'd like to try to draw a character that's going to be a lot harder to do, which is Mikola. Also known as Malenia's twin brother, possibly sister, depends on who and when you ask. The lore is, Mikola's actually a really fun character. But Mikola doesn't really show up much in the actual game. I mean, you can visit them. Sort of. They're a little tied up at the moment. So you can't really see what they looked like for most of history. And as for actual references for the character, we have 2 in the entire game for what they looked like. One of them is a few vague text descriptions, but like nothing concrete there. One of the actual references is a statue of them as a child, and the other one is a single still image from the intro sequence, and that's it. So we wouldn't have a nice, like, super easy to use, like we've got for this Malenia cinematic here, where we've got just an obvious, we can follow the pose. So this would be one where we're trying to build a new pose, basically. Trying to actually do posing, there'd be a little, like, not character design, but we'd have to do a certain amount of inferring. It's not just given to us. Definitely not just given to us. So I think it'd be good for all those skills, both on the proportions and drawing stage in the early ones, but also even before that, of the actual planning what the character is going to look like and how we want to do composition for the piece and stuff like that. So different challenges, and then once we get through those, we'll be back sort of into some of the stuff we practiced here, and we'll keep building on that. Hopefully, second go round, now that we've figured out some of the stuff, it'll be a little easier, go a little faster, but who knows. The other advantage is, while I'm not purely sticking to a month-by-month basis for things, I mean, I ain't gonna lie, February is the shortest month. March would give us a little more time to work with, hopefully. So yeah, I think that's sort of it. Plan for upcoming things. Hope to see y'all tomorrow. Either we'll be taking a break for the last day of February, or we will be... Hold on, it's 23 is... Slight tangent. I'm trying to remember when the next leap year is. Was it last year or was it 2020? The last 3 years have been a blur. I don't remember which was the leap year. It was 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. Okay, next year I think is going to be a leap year. Unless it was 06. Dagnabbit, I don't remember. They come so infrequently I always forget. But leap years are fun. Not this year though. So tomorrow is the proper end of February. We'll figure something out for that. Maybe kick off the next thing a little early. Maybe we'll do some games. Either way, hope to see y'all there. Hope to be some good background noise. And I hope that y'all have a good night. See y'all on the flip side.